Hi everyone, this is Jiggie, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. So in this video, I am going to discuss and show the controls in order for you to be able to create soft light and in turn be able to photograph beautiful portraits. So before anything else, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, now is the perfect time to do so because I will be giving away a beautiful collapsible backdrop that's 1 meter by 2 meters. The design will actually be the choice of the winner, and to join will be very simple. I'll just put the mechanics in the description below. So as I said in the intro, what I will be discussing today is basically the controls of light manipulation. In other words, I will be explaining how you could see and create soft light, which is the best type of light to be able to create beautiful portraits. And in order for me to be able to do that, I have to turn off all ambient light, and I will just use this one particular light here behind me. Okay, so I turned off most of the ambient light now, and I just have a primary light source here, which is my aperture 60x. This one actually mimics light coming from the sun. So the perfect analogy for what we are going to be doing today is that our single light source is coming from the sun. So if you really think about it, the sun is a huge light source, but we will go now to the very first principle of light manipulation, or understanding the controls of light, that the further the light source is to the subject, the smaller it becomes, therefore it becomes harsher. So if you're talking about the sun being such a huge light source, but it's so far away from you, it therefore becomes a harsh light source. That's why if you're shooting, let's say, during midday sun without any clouds, you're gonna get really harsh shadows, as like what you can see here. Now, these shadows are what you call the shadow edge transfers. This is actually the primary indication of the quality of light. So if you've got really well-defined shadows, such as what you see here, therefore you can almost say that the light quality is harsh. So now let us not confuse the quality of light to contrast. So there are theories out there saying that all you need to do is actually just add a secondary light source in order for you to open up the shadows, like this one. But look at the shadow edge transfer. You are basically just making the shadows lighter, but you are not changing the nature of the shadow. Therefore, you're not changing the quality of the light. All you are doing is actually reducing contrast. So, contrast and quality of light is very different. Today, we will just be focusing on the quality of light. Now, as I was saying earlier, the distance of the light source relative to the subject is one of your controls in order for you to be able to create soft light. The relative size of this light source to this subject will still create harsh light, like so. But look at that. It is still harsh, but look at the definition of the shadows. The shadow edge transfer already softened a bit, therefore we are getting softer light because of the distance of the light source to the subject, making this light source bigger. But it is still not soft light, or this is still not the type of light that I would actually shoot portraits in. So let's move this back here. And that is where now modifiers come in. Modifiers basically takes this light source and makes it bigger, relative, of course, again, to your subject. But instead of using a standard modifier, I will just be using this one. This is the inner diffuser of a 5-in-1 reflector, so that it's easier for me to explain to you guys. So if I put this here, this one actually acts like clouds in a sunny day. If it's a cloudy day, you'll notice that you get beautiful soft light, and that is what we are trying to replicate here in the studio. So just by adding a diffusion panel here in between the light source and our subject, we were already able to create really nice soft light. As you can see, we totally lost the definition of the shadow already here. Now, the closer that we put this diffusion panel to our subject, the more insignificant or the more the shadow edge transfer disappears and softens up. Therefore, we are creating beautiful, beautiful soft light. So that is your first principle. The bigger the light source, the softer the light. In relation, of course, to your subject. But there is also another control. It's not just about the size, but it's also about the distance. If I take this scrim now and move it back, making it relatively smaller, you will now see that the shadow edge transfer is beginning to show itself again, though it is still soft light because this diffusion panel in relation to this figure is actually still pretty big. Okay? All right. So that's your second control. The first control is basically the size of the light source. The second control is the distance of the light source to the subject. So the further the light source is away from the subject, the smaller it becomes, therefore it becomes harsher. That's why if you really want to shoot with your light far away and you want soft light, it's best to have a bigger modifier. So the further away you put it, it's still big relative to your subject. Okay, so I hope I'm making sense. But if I'm not, you could always leave your questions in the comment section below and I'll make sure to answer it as soon as I have time. Okay, so what is the third control now? The third control, I will remove this, is very, very simple, and it has something to do with flagging. If you want your shadows to be as defined as possible, there is a principle in which the further your subject is away from the light and closer to the background will give a more defined shadow, like so. If we move this one closer to the background, look at the shadows now that it's creating as compared to it being further away. So therefore, that is one of the ways in order for you to be able to soften the shadow edge transfer, not necessarily soften the light. So that is basically the basic principle of how to be able to create beautiful soft light on your subjects. So again, let's repeat. You have a light source here that's similar to the sun, which is relatively small compared to your subject because of the distance of the light of the distance of the sun from the earth. Now, in order for you to be able to get soft light from the sun, you need clouds in order to diffuse it, which is represented by the scrim. There you go. So by doing that, we actually created a bigger light source. But you also have to understand that the closer the light source is to the subject, the bigger the light source becomes. So if we're able to move it closer to the subject, you're gonna get the softest light possible. Now, this light source is actually very, very big when in relation to this subject. But if you're gonna be using this principle, you might misconstrue contrast, because I will reserve this for another topic, but to give you the gist of it, the closer the light is to your subject, the more contrast you're gonna get. Okay? So do not misinterpret having shadows on one side as harsh light, but rather it is just contrast. Always take a look at the shadow edge transfers, because the shadow edge transfers are your indication of the quality of light. And lastly, in order for you to be able to create a really defined shadow edge transfer, the principle is the further your subject is from the light source and closer to the backdrop, the more defined the shadows will be. Again, here, from here to here, you could see the shadow edge transfer already becoming very, very sharp to very soft. Okay, so I hope you understood these basic principles of how to be able to create soft light and the controls in order for me to do that. Oh, you know what? Maybe I should put this one here so that you guys can see the effect it will have on a subject like myself. So you see how harsh the light was when I was giving this outro. Again, like that. Very harsh light. Then the moment I put this, all of a sudden, it gives me beautiful soft light. Okay? So these principles are very, very basic. This is really the foundation of lighting. You have to be able to understand all these controls in order for you to be able to create beautiful soft light for your subjects. Trust me, soft light will never fail you whenever you're shooting a portrait. So don't forget, I'm giving away a beautiful backdrop, and I will be putting the mechanics in the description below. But in case you want to see some of my images, you could always follow me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. Okay? Till the next video.